Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about PS4 emulation with PS4 and Temmies Launcher. For those who may not be aware, Temmies Launcher is a launcher for PS4, and I'd argue it's integral for a great experience with the emulator. So at the time of filming, version 1.2.3 has just released, and this is the first release since January. Now, the amount of changes in this release is absolutely massive. There's a whole bunch of fixes, brand new languages, and brand new features. For example, starting PS4 in full screen mode. If you're curious about this one, I'll drop a link to Temmies Launcher in the description below and feel free to check it out. It's 100% free and open source. And speaking about free and open source, next up we're talking about Playnite, which is an open source video game library manager with one simple goal: to provide a unified interface for all of your games, and it just got a brand new release. So at the time of filming, 10.20 is the latest update. We've got some bug fixes and some improvements here. For example, global search result order ranking improvements. And they've added CHD support to PPSSPP profiles. Next up here, we're still talking about open source, and this time about ReactOS. And ReactOS says with some patches targeting Vista, mGBA 0.6.3 runs on ReactOS. And here is Pokemon Sapphire running within mGBA within ReactOS. If you haven't heard about ReactOS before, I don't blame you, although we have talked about it a few times on this channel. At a high level here, it stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, and it's a free and open source re-implementation of Windows. It might be worth checking out. Moving on, and we're talking about Steam's October Next Fest, which just ended. If you're curious as to what games were the most popular, I'll drop a link in the description below here. Enshrouded was the most popular by far, followed by Japanese Driftmaster, Sky Children of the Light, and Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. And on a side note here, if you really wanted to take a look at this data in detail, I'll drop a link to this very helpful website in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. You can see how popular Enshrouded really was. Next up, we're talking about Game Boy emulation with PYBOY, which is a Game Boy emulator written in Python, and this one just got a pretty big update. So at the time of filming, version 1.6.0 is the latest update, and the changelog is short and sweet. They've added rudimentary Pokemon Gen 1 game wrapper, and they've dramatically improved the performance. This one is available for Windows and Linux. It's free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, if you're in for some education and entertainment, there's a very interesting video on YouTube that I do recommend checking out. It's called Hacking a 25-Year-Old Game to Relive My Childhood. This person spent 100+ hours trying to get Worms 2 up and running on Windows. I'm not sure if they were aware of this page called Worms 2 Plus, an easy to install patch that makes the game run on modern computers with extra features. This has been tested on both the CD and GOG versions of Worms 2. And it works with Windows and Linux. And Worms 2 Plus is still being actively developed. It's 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Next up, we're talking about Batocera, a free and open source Linux retro gaming distribution, and Batocera 38 just dropped. This changelog is pretty big. I'll drop a link to it in the description below in the event that you wanted to go through everything. A whole bunch of emulators have been updated. There's a whole bunch of bug fixes, including one with Sinden light guns. Sinden light guns will now start when Batocera starts. They added support for the Orange Pi 5B, Orange Pi 3 LTS, Orange Pi 02, and a few other systems here, including the AYN Loki 0. They've added in additional emulation station settings for RPCS3. They added in the Play PS2 emulator. And they added in PS2 native wheel support for force feedback. And on top of that, I'll share the link for the 5-minute Batocera 38 trailer in the description below. And speaking about trailers, next up we're talking about a new MSX game called Phoenix Corrupta. I'll drop a link to this YouTube video in the description below in the event that you wanted to see some gameplay. Phoenix Corrupt is a Metroidvania horror game, and it's part of a contest going on right now, and there's a whole bunch of other games you may want to check out. Again, I'll drop a link to this site in the description below. Next up, we're talking about the Steam Deck and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and there was a patch that was just put out that allows Steam Deck users to play this game offline. Next up, we're talking about 3DS emulation with Citra. And this is a follow-up for one of my previous videos where we talked about a brand new feature that was just about to be added. As of Citra Nightly 2011, they've added the option to uninstall a game. All you have to do is right-click and uninstall, and you've got a bunch of different options here. Uninstall everything, uninstall the game, uninstall the update, and uninstall the DLC. And last up here, we're talking about racing wheels on Linux. And if you've got a racing wheel and you've got the drivers installed, but it's not behaving properly for you on Linux, you may want to consider Oversteer, and this update was spotted thanks to Gaming on Linux. At the time of filming, version 0.8.0 is just a pre-release, but they've got a whole bunch of features and they've added in a whole bunch of new wheels, including 5 different Thrustmasters. If you haven't heard about Oversteer before, some of the features include changing the rotation range, combining the accelerator and brake pedals for games that use just one axis, changing the auto-centering force strength, changing the force feedback gain, and a whole bunch more. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.